everyone, virtually from NAMM Believe in Music. Hope everyone's enjoying the show. There's been some amazing events going on, a lot of fun things that we've all been able to enjoy. Today we're doing the second installment of the Alan Heath QuickMix series. I'll explain what that's all about in a minute, but first I want to introduce our distinguished guests. First we have Chris Pollock, front of house engineer for August Burns Red. Wave hi, Chris. And then we've got Shawn London, front of house for Eagles of Death Metal and the Royal Machines, excuse me. My good friend Jade Payne, front of house for Krungbin and Bikini Kill. And Jason Alt, president of Delicate Productions and front of house for Diamond David Lee Roth. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. So the idea of this is that basically I did something kind of cruel and nasty, but I thought it would be fun. I sent these kids an input list and a folder full of multi-track audio and nothing else. And I said, you got 15 minutes, figure it out, send me a mix. And that's all you get is 15 minutes. So this is a little exercise. I want to point out that it was very important to me that this was not a mix competition, because I think that's kind of silly, okay? We've all, especially these people in this table and all of our peers, have proven that we're good at what we do by staying employed and continuing to produce happy clients. So I don't see any purpose in having a mix-off or a competition. What I think is interesting is that we all do things so differently, and everyone in this industry has got something valuable to share. And so that's what we're here to do today, is share those kinds of things. So I'd like to kick this off because it's very interesting to me, and I think it will be to all of our viewers, how you would go about this very peculiar situation where you've got very little time, you've got very little information, and your job hinges on you producing a product. So Shawn, let's kick it off with you. What did you do in advance to get ready for this? Before you even listened to audio, did you use offline editor, program the console? And then we'll just go around and see how everyone prepared for this.
So what I did was I took the input list that you gave me and basically took my template that I usually use for everything anyways. And I just my template, subtracted whatever I didn't need out of the input list. And I was, you know, I was I was checking to see that all the inputs were actually communicating with each other. Basically, I checked that my groups were still in line. All my DCAs were still working. You know, were still all programmed and routed right, and that my effects I usually use were all there. So then after that was done, I felt that I was ready to actually hook up and my sound grid, which I use Pro Tools, and put in the tracks, and that was it.
Can you tell us what you use for groups and for effects in your template? Just curious of what's in your template.
Sure. So my template consists of, on my groups, I have stereo group for my drums. I've got stereo for anything that's pan left to right, like keys, left and right, you know, backing vocals, any electronics that I got going on. And then I will use a regular mono group for like bass and for backing vocals, and stereo still. So those are pretty much my groups. Then my dynes, excuse me, I use dyne inserts on a few of my drum channels, like my kicks, my snare, and my rack toms. I like to have them kind of have a preset that I use. I just go ahead and dial those in. Once I get something going up, a mix up, but and that's as far as that's for inserts are concerned. That's what I use. I do run 4 effects, usually just my reverb. I use a stereo delay, a regular mono delay, and a doubler, and that's pretty much I use those all the time. So usually for my vocals, that's my vocal chain, and I'll put some horns, some reverb through the horns, and drums. If they needed, I'll put a little bit on that. So that's pretty much what I that's my start for my scene.
So for anyone that's not familiar with that type of workflow, and just to clarify, you're running your channels into groups, and then the groups are feeding your main mix. So none of your channels are going directly to the left, right. Is that correct?
Correct.
Cool. All right, Jason, how about you?
I kind of follow the same thing. I have a template that I built, and every artist gets the same template. It's a manageable workflow for me. I've built, countless EQ profiles now for every instrument. So I literally just drag and drop the input list, repatched it, and then I hit go and mixed it. I do not run anything directly to the left and right, and my workflow is a little more complex. It's not straight to groups. I actually use the effects send and returns as groups as well. So I put things like drums through using the effects send and return, and then return them to 2 groups that I use as parallel compression. And I use parallel compression probably a little bit different because I like to be able to control the attack and release time on the compression. So that's one part of it. And then I use my left and right as more of a master music group. So every instrument will either go through a group, an aux, or this send and return through the effects that I use. And I do put something on in that effects loop. So it'll be like transient designer on stuff, or additional, multi-band compression is kind of how I use those. And then anything musical hits the left and right. And then I actually send my vocals to aux sends, and those aux sends return into a channel that then hit a matrix. So my music hits a matrix through one element, and then anything vocal goes through 2 channels that hit that same matrix out. And I do that because I insert dynamic EQ on the left and right that's triggered by the lead vocal. So it drops out some frequencies, depending on what conflicts I'm seeing in the mix and what the vocal's putting out. It's usually about 1.2K range somewhere, pretty wide. But it's pretty complex routing, so that's why I've just built this template and I recycle it in a certain way. It works really well. It's a good workflow.
Very interesting. Cool. Thank you. And Mr. Pollock.
So I think one of my favorite things about this exercise was that I actually just started a new show file. I just loaded the flat C 1500 start and just build a new one. Because I wanted to approach it like I would approach mixing a band at a house gig for the first time or something like that. Just what's easy, what's quick, and try not to think about too much of the extra processing that I would do for a band that I'm touring with. So I really had fun just kind of just doing a nice straight up new show file. I did groups for everything too. I break everything down a little bit more than that. So I have kick and snare groups, tom groups, cymbal groups, bass guitars. I kind of just break it all down like that. And I set up 4 effects engines, couple delays, couple reverbs. And I went through and did high passes, chose compressors that I thought would work for given the input list. But other than that, it was just totally flat, and without really any other decisions made. Like I said, other than the actual compressor that I chose and the effects engines.
Very cool. Yeah, nothing like a clean slate and a fresh start. Yeah, I remember I laughed when you texted me. They said, you've been mixing the same band for a very long time, so you were really excited to build a new show file from scratch. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I work, when I'm working here in Philly at home between tours, I just use other consoles and stuff like that, and I have basic start files for those consoles. But with the D-Live, I pretty much exclusively use it with August Burns Red. So I have this really built up ABR show file, and I just wanted to kind of experience the console like I would like for the first time with like a nice simple start.
Outstanding. All right, Jade, you're up.
All right. Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of everybody's techniques. It had been a while since I'd mixed on a DLive, so I also started my scene from scratch. I was on an S5000, and yeah, I kind of wanted to just get everything set up enough and in place. I didn't really want to engage anything when I was building the file in Director, but yeah, my stuff kind of goes like, yeah, I use groups. I had my kick in and out going in kick group, snare top bottom going to snare group. Then I had the kick and snare groups feeding 2 channels, which then those were kick and snare channels. Same with toms, and then those channels end up dumping into the drum group. Overheads, they just go in the drum group. I put all the keys and the Leslie on a key group. Yeah, guitars, background vocals, lead vocal, all in their own group. So I start off that way, and that's kind of how I usually build all my shows like that. And yeah, just kind of started loading stuff into the racks, compressors, kind of where I thought they'd be appropriate. Building up the effects engine. I pretty much used all of those. Setting up a vocal plate at a drum room, snare plate, instrument room, slap. I put a doubler down just in case the background vocals, or actually the lead vocal, might need it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't engage any of the compressors. I didn't actually end up using most of the comps that I set up, but I just took them out of circuit and just wanted to have these things like there, if I needed them. So yeah, everything feeds groups. I also set up a bunch of DCAs. Since I was on the S5000, I wanted to stay on the same layer since you get, 3 whole banks. So I was able to do that. I had my soft keys doing my effects sends on faders. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted everything to be ready if I needed it, but mostly I didn't want to just, I didn't want to use comps on everything. So I kind of ended up playing it safe in the end. So
I think it's funny. Sorry if I embarrass you by sharing, but Jade reached out to me and asked if she could get the band name so that she could do some research. And I said, no, you cannot.
Yeah, you shut that down. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
I said your client's a jerk, and they're not giving you any information because they don't, that's the way clients are sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but
right.
it's
awesome.
It's yeah.
You survived anyway. I knew you would.
Yeah,
I should mention you're seeing clips of stuff come in and out of the screen. Those are the videos of some of the folks doing their mix, and you can check those videos out on the page. My friend Jeff will post a link up so that everyone can get that. In that same location, you'll have access to their final mixes if you should want to listen to them. Okay, so I think from this point, the natural progression is, so you've done your setup, everything is, you feel like you're as ready as you can be with the pathetic amount of information that I gave you. You press play, and then where do you go next? Shawn, we can just keep the order. I think it works.
Sure. So now that I got signal coming up where it's supposed to, after I press play, just kind of start how I would start any other show. And again, I'm thinking more like I'm in a festival. So 15 minutes is really all you get. So for me to have my template ready is, it's everything I need. So bringing in the faders, kicks, listen to them, kind of messing around a little bit, engaging, getting my gates set correctly, checking the comps on them. And again, I forgot to mention that I put a comp on everything. I just don't have them engaged, and then I'll go through, like Jade mentioned, putting stuff in when it needed it, and if I didn't need it, it's there. It's a great thing about the D-Live is that you've got so many effects and you got so much, DSP. It's like it's awesome. So we just start off the kicks. I get everything sounded good. I mess around with the EQs a little bit, get it to where I like it. And then we go with the snare. Same with the hi-hat. Check with everything. Get all my panning correctly on the toms. Be sure the toms sound great. And then basically move down the line until I get a decent sounding.
Did you have much EQ preset? Did you do any preset EQ?
The drums, I had the kicks. It was I had a dip of the kick, and then the snares were flat. I re-EQ the snares. The toms, it's basically a lot of dip. On the drum stuff, I dip a lot of the pre-EQ down to like 400, 500 hertz, and then boost a little bit around the 10K just to give it that, But that's kind of the average what I do for any console or any template or any band. So I didn't, as far as just the normal, I didn't do anything outrageous because obviously we're stressed for time. But I took a little bit more time on the first 4 or 5 channels on the video if you watch. But I just wanted to sound good to me. That's all. So other than that, I just made my way and ended up at 15 minutes right after I put up the effects channel, and I heard the vocal sound like the way I wanted it to sound, and that's where I was at. I ended up that way.
Sweet. Mr. Jason, clock's running, band's on stage. Where do you go first?
I go vocals, because that's what people are there to hear. I approached it kind of the same way Shawn did, where I thought of it from a festival approach, where I'm going to make sure the vocals dialed, make sure people can hear that, make sure kick and snare are working so that there's some beat, and then kind of filled it in from there. Template worked out really well for me that way. There's a lot of, I have, like everybody else, there's compression on groups and all that kind of stuff. And I did use some preset EQ on the drums. And then it was pretty light on effects. I always go pretty light when I don't know the band really well. So it was like a little verb on the vocal and a little bit of delay. But my approach has always been that way is, we're working around the vocal the way for live sound. That's what people are there to hear. So that's kind of my approach.
Understood. Heard. Mr. Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar kind of experience too. I threw snare up, kick up, just to kind of get my gain structure going because I mixed it on headphones. So I just kind of want to make sure that I knew where I was at. Vocal up, bass guitar up. I got everything up. And again, because I started flat, I just felt like I just wanted to get everything there as quickly as I could. And then I just started bouncing around, trying to make it, sound like something other than just a bunch of inputs, But I mean, again, same thing. I thought of it like a festival, and that's exactly how I would, get that vocal up there and then build around that.
Very cool. Did I should have asked, were you guys watching the clock? Could you see your clock, or were you just waiting for the alarm to go off blindly?
I waited for the alarm.
I watched the clock.
It was dangerous.
Yeah.
I had a timer up for sure. I could like a separate laptop.
I actually forgot about it.
It was real dark where I was, so I didn't see it. I couldn't see it.
Got it. Yeah, I could go both ways. I've done a couple of these, and and I do stuff like this because I'm got no life. I do stuff like this for my own fun, and I prefer not to see the clock. But I know some people really want to time manage. I think for me personally, because I'm such a space case, if I focus on the clock and not what I'm doing. But people with better time management skills probably would benefit from saying, okay, I'm halfway through. Now I need to be at this level. I'm just not that smart. So just think it's interesting. Okay, sorry, Jade. How did you start once the audio came in?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Bangs. I could have used one of those jumbo clocks right in front of me, because I feel like I spend most time on vocal and kind of the rhythm section, and there were definitely some things I didn't even have time to touch. But I guess to kind of take you through from start, the first thing I did was adjust my trim levels, since it's a playback from a multi-track. I just kind of wanted to get those sitting right before I touched anything else. So I definitely spent some time just kind of making sure everything came in on the front, something manageable. And yeah, definitely spent some time rerouting my groups, because let me ask you guys this. Did anyone get thrown off by vocal 1 not having any vocal on it, or was that just me?
I caught that as well.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure if Bangs, you were just messing with us, or if that was like a little curveball or something.
You know what? It was one song from a multi-song session, and that person sang that one song. So that's a situation that you're going to run into. But yeah,
you cut out when you say that. What did?
Oh, sorry. That singer just didn't sing on that one song, so it was part of a larger session, and they didn't have a vocal part on that song. So
yeah,
so
that's totally real.
That wasn't a cruel trick.
Yeah,
that's funny. I didn't even notice.
Definitely. Lesson learned, because you can't always just assume that vocal 1 is going to be the lead vocal, or if that singer's even going to sing on it. But I kind of had to stop and like reroute, because I assumed it was the lead, and so I already had it routed to my lead vocal group, and so I had to kind of switch some things around there. But yeah, got me. But I think there was a pretty good recovery. So yeah, just kind of getting those good, getting the kick to kind of sit through. Spent a lot of time on those. I didn't really touch the toms much, because I kind of had trouble finding them. The song didn't seem to be full of tom fills. So I just didn't, and I don't really want to mess with anything if I'm not hearing it. I'm more likely to just kind of stay off of it instead of treat it. So yeah, I just kind of went through the main rhythm section, and did some panning with the organ. I actually had my Moog and bass DI and bass mic all in the same bass group. So had that side chain to the kick group, and made sure that was kind of working, and just kind of threw some things to effects. It's not kind of like Chris, like I didn't want to mess with it too much, just because I just feel like, the song's 7 minutes long, so you're kind of spending most of that time getting a feel for it, and yeah, just making sure, as if it were a festival, making sure everything is audible. Yeah. That's
For our newer mixers who may be listening, can you explain why you would want to sidechain your bass group to your drum group? Because that's a really effective tool, and I think some people would benefit from hearing the thought and operation behind that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the bass and your kick, they tend to occupy the same sub-frequency range, and so those two things tend to clash when they're coming in at the same time. So a lot of us will treat it such that the kick, the bass can be tucked in a little bit under the rhythm of the kick if the kick is triggering a compression in a certain range that you designate on your bass. So what I like to do is I like to try to find my fundamental in both kick in and kick out. And once I find the fundamental frequencies, so the lower sub fundamental, like what really gives you that oomph. And then, so once I find that range, I head on over to the bass group and I set my sidechain filter to that range. So that every time the kick engages, it's ducking that range down in the bass. So it's creating more space in that frequency range for each instrument to kind of come through. And so what ends up happening is you just get like a tighter rhythm going on. That's kind of how I like to explain it.
Yeah,
so
great. That's
yeah.
And it is a wonderful technique. I've seen a lot of people do all kinds of. Anybody else doing any creative side chaining for space
absolutely.
creation?
Yeah, I did it.
I mean, that's something I would first. Oh, sorry.
Space as well. Yeah.
Jason, go ahead. We'll come back to you, Chris.
Oh no, I do it actually at two. At the top end and the bottom end of the kick drum and bass relationship. I also do it lead vocal to the whole band mix, like I was saying earlier. So, but I use dynamic EQ to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and
Chris,
I feel like it's. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say same thing, like similar thing. Like I will often sidechain a band of dynamic EQ from. I will sidechain a band of dynamic EQ that is on the bass guitar to the kick drum, so that you get a little duck around the fundamental of the kick drum on the bass guitar when the kick hits, just to kind of make a hole for the kick to punch through the bass. I think that's awesome technique.
There you go, listeners.
I didn't do it on the
Everyone's doing it, so you need to do it too. Sorry, Jade, you had something to add? And real quick.
Oh yeah,
Jade,
just saying, like it's
for everyone. Sorry, for everyone listening, just so you understand, we're dealing with a pretty significant delay because we're on opposite sides of the country. So forgive the challenges of having a conversation where people are talking and then 3 seconds later it stops. So it's interesting. All right, sorry, Jake, go ahead.
Just to top it off, it's just amazing when you try this with sidechaining guitar to a vocal, because especially for really loud stages, it's just like such a big difference getting a vocal to cut through by doing that. That's it.
Oh, so you're like ducking the vocal, or ducking the guitar with the vocal, rather.
Not in this song, but in situations where I've had a loud rock band, yes.
That's cool.
But I didn't feel like I had to do that in this song. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. One thing I did use too.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Jade.
Oh yeah, just I did use the dual stage valve preamp on my lead and second vocal as well. That kind of helped bring it up a bit and allow it to like kind of sparkle. I really like that option in the D Lives.
Nice. Hopefully everyone saw the interview with Dr. Rob Clark, who designs all those plugins. And if you missed it, you can catch that on the Believe in Music website. It's a conversation between Rob Clark and I talking about the development and fundamentals of those models. So they're really fun. Somebody else had a question that was going to chime in?
I was just going to ask, did anybody miss having a hi-hat channel? Like, it was one of the things that I went back and on my second pass listening to it, I ended up compressing the overheads pretty aggressively to get that to kind of come into the mix a little cleaner.
Yeah, I found myself panning that side hi-hat, but it picked it up pretty well. The overhead did, and with the combination of the snare and the overhead, it was in the mix. Yeah, for not having a channel, I mean, it worked all right for me.
Yeah, I was actually kind of stoked to not have it. I was just like, cool, overheads, nice. Done. Put it up. I put it on a stereo fader and on a stereo channel, and I just threw it up, and it was like, great. Yeah, that's a wrap on cymbals.
One. Yeah, I also felt like I could hear it. I didn't do a hard pan on the overheads, but I guess if anything, I forgot that we didn't have a hi-hat because it was definitely coming through in that right channel.
I knew that would come up eventually, and I was surprised that nobody said, "Hey, where's the hi-hat?" before you actually went for it. That wasn't a choice that I made. That was the engineer that tracked it did not include a hi-hat channel. So there was a drum room channel that I went ahead and omitted because there wasn't any useful information in it, and I just thought it would be more annoying than anything else to have that extra channel. So I went ahead and deleted that one. What else did you find out? Like, how did we feel overall about what the band was giving you as far as input wise? Anything else that was tripping you up?
To sort of jump back to what Jade said earlier, I actually was like kind of bummed about how hot everything was coming in because I felt like I had to kind of mix because I didn't take the time to like trim. I didn't want to trim anything. I just kind of ended up mixing with my faders lower than I would have wanted to kind of keep my gain staging like where I wanted it, especially with how things were hitting my groups and stuff. But I did think that everything sounded great because I didn't like ever solo anything or anything like that. I just kind of like threw it up and mixed in context. So I thought it was recorded pretty well, but it was all super hot, and I wish I could have had my faders higher. Really, is the only thing.
Did you get on the talkback and tell them to turn down?
Yeah, right. I should have.
Yeah, I noticed that they used Telefunken M80s and M81s for pretty much everything, which those are great mics, but I don't actually tour with those, so it was a little new to me. But I also thought everything sounded pretty good, and I actually didn't touch much of my EQ. Like I was looking through all my channels afterwards, and I didn't really do much on a lot of stuff. It's pretty much just, took it as it came.
Yeah, I think I only EQ'd the vocal.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I touched the vocal EQ more than anything. I don't remember really EQing much of it because it all sounded pretty good. It was incredibly hot coming in. And same thing, I didn't adjust any trim. I just did it with faders.
Shawn, how did you feel about that?
I usually on my master bus, I usually put an insert in like the Dyne 8, and I'll do one of the presets on it, the preset EQs, which is like I think it's a live left right, whatever the one that they have. So I actually didn't use it and I forgot about it, and it actually sounded fine. The only really EQ I did was, like I said, like Jason said, was the vocals. And, I put a little bit, I did do an insert on the lead vocal, another Dyne 8, and I actually put, and then on the actual group compression, I put a Tektronix, the Opto Tektronix compressor limiter. That thing is awesome. It just, the clarity it's just above any of the other, compressors that we have. I mean, they all work great, but for vocals and anything that gives you that little bit of shimmer, I just find it that works better. And it gives you, and then the gain control and the limit control on it, they're just spot on. I mean, you just barely touch it a couple dB, and it'll go right where you want it to go. So you can set things right in the mix, so it separates pretty well for you, but it gives you the clarity that you wanted. So that's what. And as far as EQ, that's really, that's the most I've ever done was just the vocal. A lot of the other stuff was flat, except for the drums a little bit here and there, but all the other instruments came straight in. Like the gain that came off of it, I didn't have to do much gain structure. It was cool.
Chris, what deep models?
Hold on. Before you answer your question, I was going to say that I actually got to use the Optronic a lot more on this mix than I typically would mixing metal, just because LA2A like that is typically kind of slow for what I'm going for. But I was really stoked to get to use that on this because I haven't had the opportunity to, and I was also very impressed with how smooth and it's just a great sounding LA2A, model, and yeah, it was just fun to get to use that.
That was actually my question, and I was going to give that to everyone, starting with you, Chris. Is what models did you use, and where, and why, if you want?
Yeah, sure. I think I mostly lean, generally speaking, I lean on the opto on like my input, like as my default input compressor. So I pretty much I don't use the stock one on anything really. Like anywhere I would just want like a more transparent compressor, I'll start with the opto. And then on this mix, I think I use most way on my groups. And then on like snare and toms, I did the 160 VU. I find that 160 VU like really just is like super punchy. And again, like that's just sort of my style, like where I want to start, which doesn't necessarily always get me where I want to go with like a band like the one that we mixed. But yeah, those are probably the three main ones I use in this. I think I did on 1170. I can't remember the actual names of the models, the Allen Heath names.
That's okay.
1176.
You call it whatever.
1176 style one on the I think it's on like snare bottom, and I had the normal 160, that 160A or whatever it's called, on something. I can't remember now, but I try to use like a good spread of them just again to kind of get the different flavors of the console.
Nice. Jade, how about you for compressor models?
Yeah, I definitely use the opto on my cymbals and on the main. I totally agree. It's just, you don't even really need to tweak it that much, but it just kind of adds like a really nice presence, good shimmer. So I use that, and on all my vocals, I use the 16T or 160. I really love that one for vocals. It's just really quick, and it just gets them where you want real fast. And then for bass DI, bass mic, I had the Mighty compressor. And I think for kick group, I also use the Mighty compressor as well. Yeah. And then what else did I get? In terms of inserts on effects, I had I don't know if we're just talking about compressors, but I used that, like I said before, the 80T doubler, which I thought was pretty cool. And then the Echo Slapback is really nice for that lead vocal. So, oh yeah,
Very cool.
and then
Shawn?
the 76 peak limiter on guitars for sure. And that's it.
Nice one. Yeah, nice. Shawn, did you dive into the models? I know you said that you had one on everything. Do you start with just one model, or you got a variety?
Well, for drums and bass, all the Mighty all across the board, and depending on how much I need out of it, because I know that I'm gonna actually end up using the group compression a little more. So just to shape each channel, I'll use the Mighty for the kick snares, toms, and bass lines. Guitars, I use the 16 VU or the for vocals. The optos always sound great. That's pretty much what I use, and then obviously the along with the inserts, they're all 9/8 stuff. But yeah, that's the models that I like to choose.
Nice. Jason, did you dive into the different models?
Yeah, I touched pretty much every single one of them, depending on what I found that the 76 on a lot of stuff, I ended up leaning towards, and I like the Mighty on the drums. Definitely works out really well. I use the opto on some output stages as peak limiter, especially on vocal, at the high end part of it. It didn't actually. I ended up taking it out for this because there was no real screaming going on compared to what I'm used to. Yeah, I think I ended up using. I like the I forget the 16, not the T, but the other one you got going on. I
The
forget
VU.
model number. The VU, I like that one a little
16.
bit better on vocals, so it works out really well. So
Yeah, it's a little softer and a little darker. You guys will hopefully be excited to know that in my talk with Dr. Rob today, we found out that there is an SSL bus compressor coming, SSL styled, I should say.
Ooh.
And also he said that he's got a new model coming that has him very distressed, if anyone can guess what that might be.
Boy.
can we add to that list?
So-
Because I got one that
Yeah.
nobody's gotten close to. Even the guys who make it don't even have is not close. So
Yeah. Well, one last thing that I want to add is that a very exciting way for possibly expanding a primary source might be coming very soon to do that.
yeah, there you go.
So
What could that
You
be?
know, I want to add one thing real quick, is that these the emulation on all of these are done so well. I mean, each one of these effects that I've used, I mean, working for the first 20 years with outboard gear, what you're working with and what you hear, but they're really, really close. And that's the one thing I do appreciate.
So I think it would be interesting if anyone wants to call themselves out on places where you struggled or things that were challenging for you, and perhaps how you moved on from it would be helpful for some of the younger engineers.
Okay. The one thing.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Jade.
Mine's quick. It was just time management for me. I wish that I'd just given the span and all the constraints of what we were doing. I just wish that I kind of had made a list for myself of what I wanted to accomplish by minute 5, or okay, by the 10-minute mark, I want to have done these things. I feel like I was just I found myself kind of scrambling around. I feel good about what I did accomplish, but overall, just, managing the time was the biggest thing for me.
So while you're here, what would you have done? And then everyone else can follow. Run both these questions in tandem. What would you have done given 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes? Because I mean, we would all mix for the next 5 hours if somebody let us. But
Well, for
I
me,
would have paid
I
more
think-
attention to my. Oh, you go ahead. Sorry, Shawn.
No, go ahead.
All right, I would have paid more attention to my effects returns. I didn't really get to. I usually like to EQ those and pan them too, and making sure those are sitting well. So I think I ended up not sending as much to them, but if I had 5 more minutes, I would have just kind of dressed things up a little bit more and just given the whole thing a little bit more depth. So.
And for me, it was pretty much the vocals. I wish I would have spent more time with the vocals and actually getting the backing vocals to basically sit right where they were, and maybe EQ'd them a little bit more. But that was, the time. Again, just thinking about how much time we had. Like I said, I got lost, in the first half of it, and I remember that, oh shit, I got to hurry up. So yeah, I think time constraint and just basically fine tuning would have been what I would have done more, but that's what I had.
Yeah, I never got past headphones on it. So I ended up doing the whole mix on headphones, which I normally wouldn't have normally do. So I got a little lost in that. And I would have, when I listened back to the mix, I was like, oh, the snare drum's a couple dB too hot. And one of the vocal in the first chorus or something was, as I recall, it was a little loud, but it's that it would have been engaging a little more compressors because I disengaged everything when I started it and only engaged stuff as I felt I needed it. So I would have just polished it up. I think we all, probably every engineer out there would have done the same thing.
I think if I could
Chris,
have had 5 more
anywhere
minutes,
that
I
you
would have wanted it
struggled
on the front end of everything, because I wish I'd had the opportunity to like line check it. Just because I felt like I didn't hear anything before I was just like, we're mixing the show. I sort of felt like everything kind of came up a bit more like, wideband and not sitting anywhere. And I was like, again, like kind of like Jade mentioned, like I felt like myself bouncing around, kind of like, oh, and here's this, and here's this, and I don't know, and I need to jump back over here and work on this, and I feel like if I'd had just a couple extra minutes to like do a quick line check, that would have given me a bit more of when I pushed it up, I maybe would have been closer to where I wanted to land. But other than that, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like everyone else said, like,
Yeah,
Jade.
I kind of actually felt like I sort of regretted going a little buck wild with like setting up all these groups into groups and this and that. Like in a way, I kind of felt like it may have just been better for the nature of the challenge to just kind of mostly mix or left right, or just not make it as busy. And I'm just talking about my template, because that probably would have been like I had like DCAs on one layer and like groups, and I know a lot of people do one or the other, but I just like having all the options. But at the same time, kind of having too many options was hard to stay focused. So yeah, I might have
I love
just
that.
like
I think
scaled
that's
back my template a little more.
I think that's really interesting that you think you would scale back, and Jason was super stoked that he had this super convoluted template. And I think that's what's great about all of this is that we all have so many different ways of approaching things, and none of them are
my template is not
any more right than the
convoluted.
others.
Wait, I'm going to back up 1 second. I sent you a drawing of how convoluted my convoluted, process is, and it works really well. So,
Yeah, and that's my point, is that we all do things differently, and Jade in this instance said that she set up the template based on what she normally does, but in this particular instance she felt like she wished she wouldn't have, whereas you were like, yep, I used my template, everything went as I thought it would, I'm super stoked on my template. So I think that's what's fun about this, is that everything's different for everyone, and every situation is different, and every day is a new day. Have you ever had a situation where your template let you down? Let me ask you that. Surely you must have.
Not yet, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, okay.
I've run now, like, since you sent me a 1500, I've run 20 artists through it on some level, whether it's just playback or actually ran 2 live, and it's worked out really well compared to other consoles that I normally use. I've also had to I've minus 1 artist where I have to leave the box. It's the first console where I've been able to do everything in the box that I need to be able to accomplish. Even though my routing to get there is a little complex, it works out really well.
That's awesome.
Especially Jade likes
my template.
Of course,
I'll send it to you guys if you want.
Please do,
just so you can see how wacky.
Please do.
So
yeah, I'd be curious.
Except for Shawn, I'm not sending anything to Shawn. Sorry.
I don't want anything.
I will say that is one of my favorite things about DLive in general, about the platform, is that if there's a thing you think you want to do, like you can do it on the console. Like I've never once, and I've been touring with DLive for like 3 years now. I've never once been like, oh, like I really wish I had a Wave server to accomplish this, or I wish I had like more buses to do this or that or whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, I want to take this here, and then I want it to come back here, and then I want to do this to it. And there's just so many paths and so many. The routing is so flexible that you can pretty much accomplish whatever you want, like in the desk, and I really like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the workflow is just, it's so important, and having DLive have the option to change your workflow like as quick as you want it to be, and put things where you want it to go, and have it still work for you, that's really cool. And I've done work on every single console there is, but I'm not just saying this because DLive's here, but I love DLive. It's a great console just for that reason.
Sweet. Well, we got to wrap up here in a few minutes, but before we go, I just want to quickly get an impression from you guys. Education has become my passion lately, and so if we could go around the table really quick for if we have a lot of young people wanting to learn about audio here, what would you say briefly to someone is the most important thing that they could do if they want to get into the seat that you're in now?
I'll start this. I would say shadow somebody. I mean, if you can get a gig with, like a production company or a sound audio company, or maybe just a little club, just hands-on is the best way. Watch the guy, watch your front of house engineer, watch the tech, just, pay attention, learn everything you can. And next thing you know, you'll be behind a console and mix a gig within, less than a year at a professional level, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I own a sound company, so it's learning a couple of key things: is gain structure, learning frequency, understanding how stuff works. Get as much hands-on knowledge. Everybody's got offline editors. Especially in our current environment, if you haven't learned every console that's out there or everything that's going on in the audio industry, it's just knowledge. Absorb as much knowledge as you possibly can. I watch a lot of engineers struggle when we do festivals for that reason, is they have to walk up and throw up a mix and they don't know how to do it. Learn how to do things fast and repetition, and it's all about just absorbing knowledge right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, I'll go. Yeah, definitely. We're in such a special time where there's just so much knowledge out there and so many resources. A lot of it's free. Get out there and read the manuals, watch all the videos, take the trainings, and most of all, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of engineers are, we got a lot of time right now. So I've definitely read articles and emailed the people that wrote them, the engineers that wrote them, with questions, and they'll get back to you. I feel like this is the type of community that really, we love nerding out. We love sharing knowledge and skills. And so yeah, definitely talk to some folks and just ask. And also I think it's been cool that a lot of production houses are, have consoles sitting in them unused. Reach out to them and see if you can come in and get a demo on something, or get some drive time, because that's really important too. I mean, you can't just learn it all from YouTube. You really do have to, it's a tactile thing. It's not, and even in that way, it's more than just a tactile thing. It's, practice listening and get your frequencies down, and yeah. And also one more thing I would say, just be a decent human. A lot of this is, a lot of the ways you get hired in this kind of job is, people want to be around you. And so don't think it's just all engineering, a lot of it is just the hang too. Many people have said that, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of double down on some of that and just say, mix as much as you can. It doesn't matter if it's at church or the open mic or your buddy's band or whatever. Any opportunity to get behind a console and practice like the thing that you want to do is so valuable. Because just, every time you mix the show, every time you mix whatever, it doesn't matter if it's like a lav, at a corporate event, like that's going to help you hone your ear and learn what you want to hear and learn what you think is good and what you think is bad. And it's just so important to take every opportunity and capitalize on that and try and learn from it and get those 10,000 hours. And you just gotta practice. And I think that just getting out there and doing it like in any way you possibly can is so valuable at elevating your skills so that hopefully you can, land where you'd ideally like to be, but you can need to have the skills to get there. And also, like Jade said, it's super important to be a good hang because nobody wants to take you on tour and suck.
Awesome.
True that.
I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for giving up your afternoon or your evening or whatever it may be for hanging out with us. I hope you had fun with this. I think it was really valuable. I think there was some incredibly important information here for young engineers. And have a great NAMM, everyone. And have a good evening. Thanks.
See you guys.
Take care. Thanks, guys.